Welcome to Synopsis. I'm Gökçe Özdemir, a biomedical scientist specialized in neuroscience, and Synopsis is a bridge to make medical science more understandable for everyone. Today is Valentine's Day, which makes it a perfect opportunity to talk about the science of love. And as an act of love, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Before we dive into the science, I had to ask, who decided that we needed an official holiday to remind us of our relationship status? Seems a little unfair to the single folks out there. If anything, we should start a thriving alone day, complete with self-care discounts and a free pass to ignore couples' Instagram posts. But then again, maybe that's the challenge, learning to celebrate love in all its forms, even when it's not ours. There's something powerful about being genuinely happy for other people's happiness, about recognizing that love in any form adds something good to the world. It's not about comparison, it's about connection. And in that sense, Valentine's Day does have its charm. It's an excuse to go the extra mile, to make love feel a little more visible. And that's beautiful. But here's the thing, if it takes a marked date on the calendar to remember that you love and you're loved, maybe that love deserves a little more attention on the other 364 days of the year. Love isn't just for Valentine's Day, it's in the everyday moments, the quiet gestures, the way we show up when no one's watching. And yet, here we are, celebrating a day dedicated to love. So, how did Valentine's Day even begin? The history is a bit murky, but the most popular story traces back to Saint Valentine, a priest in 3rd century Rome. Legend has it that Emperor Claudius II banned marriages for young men, believing single soldiers fought better. Valentine, defying the decree, secretly officiated weddings until he was caught and executed on February 14th. Some say he even left a note for a loved one signed "From your Valentine," inspiring the phrase we still use today. And of course, the holiday we know didn't take shape until much later. By the Middle Ages, romantic love and chivalry were woven into today's meaning, and by the 19th century, mass-produced Valentine's cards turned into a commercial event. Fast forward to today, and it's a billion-dollar industry filled with chocolates, flowers, and candlelit dinners. But at its core, Valentine's Day was never about the grand gestures. It was about the simple act of choosing love, even against all odds. Love isn't just a fleeting moment. It's the way our bodies know before our minds do, the way we gravitate towards someone as if we've known them in another life. Love is the invisible thread that binds us, not just on Valentine's Day, but in every ordinary moment that suddenly feels extraordinary. It's in the small things. The way someone remembers how you take your coffee. The quiet check-in text. The warmth of a familiar voice at the end of a long day. It's how we show up for each other, whether as family, friends, or lovers. Love is written in our biology, whispered in our instincts, and sometimes it's so strong that we can believe it's even written in the stars. So if I've gotten you emotional enough, let's question the science of love. What actually happens in our brains when we fall, bond, and stay in love. And don't worry, I'll make you emotional again at the end, after all the science jargon. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. If you listened to last week's episode on the neuroscience of grief, I used some Shakespeare references, so it's only fair to keep up with the inspiration and create a play. Also, just so you know, this episode will only feature the immediate falling in love and staying in love stages. No heartbreak or attachment issues or toxic relationships here. This is a happy place. So here we go. Act 1, the first meeting, chemistry of attraction. Our setting is that you're getting ready for a date. You met online, had some chats, the conversations have been engaging, and the minds already kind of like each other. But now your bodies must decide. He's coming to pick you up and take you somewhere for dinner or some drinks maybe. Scene 1. The car pulls over. We have 3 biological processes to highlight here. You've been excited to meet, and this causes an anticipation in the brain, which is regulated by dopamine. It's a neurotransmitter in your brain associated with reward, motivation, and excitement. If you listened to episode 6, you know that dopamine isn't about feeling good. It's not a feel-good hormone. It's a reward and motivation hormone. It's the molecule that causes craving because you expect to feel good after you get what you crave. It has a bunch of other roles in the body and the brain as well, but here it's the mesolimbic dopamine pathway that's activated in the brain, and you're anticipating reward from this interaction. It's released by the ventral tegmental area and binds to the nucleus accumbens. Second process to look at are the stress hormones, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and cortisol. As he's pulling over, acetylcholine is released, a neurotransmitter priming your body for a response. Then the hypothalamus signals the pituitary gland to signal the adrenal gland to release epinephrine, also known as adrenaline. Epinephrine is the first major player. It increases your heart rate, your blood flow, and alertness because there's novelty and uncertainty of the situation. So in case you need to run away, your body needs to be alert and ready. After this initial surge, norepinephrine also increases to sharpen your focus, and cortisol increases to manage your stress and energy. This cascade is why your heart might feel like it's racing before you even lay eyes on the person. And next time you feel this anxiety, if you're certain that this person won't kidnap you, you can help your nervous system calm down by taking long exhales. Keep your exhale 2 seconds or so longer than your inhale to stimulate your vagus nerve and slow down your heart rate. Third process is the prefrontal cortex of your brain. It's activated to help you navigate this social interaction. It's planning and making decisions on how you want it to go, what you want to talk about, and so on. It also works to keep your amygdala in check, a structure deep in the brain that regulates your fear and anxiety response. More amygdala activation means more fear response. Okay, on to scene 2. You're in the car, a moment of hesitation as you lock eyes for the first time. Eye contact will trigger the release of oxytocin, your love, bonding, and trust hormone. It's produced in the hypothalamus and released by the pituitary gland. And for its role in pair bonding, it binds in the nucleus accumbens, part of the mesolimbic pathway in the brain, where dopamine also binds. Again, talked a lot about this stuff in the previous episode. So while dopamine encourages reward and motivation, oxytocin codes for this stimulus to include an element of love and trust. The number of oxytocin receptors you have in your nucleus accumbens, meaning the number of doors oxytocin can enter from, varies between you and everyone else. And this number plays a great role in how you approach love and relationships. It's kind of written in your DNA. It's also released after birth in the newborn and the mother to create that maternal bond. Next biological element for scene 2 is scent. Not from perfumes or deodorants, your and his innate scent determined by your pheromones. Remember the famous novel Perfume, written by Patrick Suskind, published in 1985, later turned into a movie? He describes a perfume made of body odors that drives people into ecstasy and make them forget about their civilized behaviors. And as gruesome as the story is, it does have a scientific basis when you think about it. Okay, back to the car. Being in each other's presence and scent field, you probably already have a good idea about whether you're physically attracted to this person or not. I'm sure you've felt this before, or maybe you're one of the skeptics who tell people that they're crazy or unstable for feeling attraction so quickly. And of course, physical features play a role, but arguably a bigger contribution is made by pheromones, which create a scent that you're not even consciously aware of, and a scent that tells a whole about you and your DNA. Pheromones are a hidden form of communication that serve an evolutionary purpose in mate selection, marking territory, or even caring for offspring. Pheromones are a more legit science with animals than humans. Mammals, reptiles, and amphibians, they all have what's called the vomeronasal organ, the VNO. What VNO does is it detects pheromones, and humans are mammals, so we also have a VNO, but the science is divided about whether VNO is functional in humans or not. and also divided about if humans have pheromones at all, or is it just the olfactory odors that we use? The division about human pheromones is likely due to the difficulty in measuring them and sample sizes and reproducibility issues. It's a tough concept to prove in a lab. And this is where more social science studies come to the rescue. I have some studies to make you say, whoa. In your DNA, on chromosome 6, there's a gene cluster called the major histocompatibility complex, MHC. It contains more than 200 genes. It's basically your biological footprint, a unique molecular structure that helps your immune system recognize what belongs inside you and what doesn't. In humans, these genes are called human leukocyte antigen, or HLA genes, named because they were first discovered in white blood cells from different individuals. These genes are polymorphic, meaning there are multiple variants of each gene within the population. And this is why they have a crucial role in determining donor compatibility for organ transplants. When two people's MHC profiles are too different, the body rejects the new organ and sees it as an invader. And it turns out MHC isn't just about immune defense, it actually plays a role in mate attraction. Studies looking at attraction usually use clothing. They make people wear shirts and then others smell these shirts and report their attraction to the scent of the shirt. And studies have repeatedly shown that the more different your HLA compatibility is, the more attracted you are to each other. You prefer an HLA profile that's different from yours over a profile that's similar, which is the opposite trend for organ transplants. And now that I think about it, it makes a lot of sense if there's a statistic that says most partners can't donate organs to their loved ones who need a transplant. You can donate a kidney or part of your liver without harm to yourself, so it would be really cool to know how many people who need a kidney or liver transplant are able to get it from their romantic partners. Based on the role of MHC on attraction, it sounds like not many could do that at all, unless they got married for reasons other than love and attraction. And what's really interesting is that this effect of genetic compatibility is disrupted by oral contraception use. It's not that women using oral contraceptives affects their attractability, it's that it affects the evolutionary reasoning, or the lack thereof, in their mate selection. So while women often prefer odor of MHC dissimilar males, women using oral contraceptives showed the opposite preference. They also looked at the role of relationship status, and single women preferred odors of MHC similar men, while women in relationships preferred odors of MHC dissimilar men, suggesting that females may seek to improve offspring quality through extra pair partnerships. But relationship or not, a significant preference shift towards MHC similarity was definitely associated with contraceptive pill use. If there is any biological trend, more often than not, it serves an evolutionary purpose for the survival of humanity or energy conservation. Those who express genes that help their survival in whatever conditions are at the time can produce offspring and continue the expression of those genes that helps them survive. Same goes for the ability of not expressing a gene when that gene is not compatible with survival. Mating with a different MHC profile than your own probably proved over millennia to be helpful in creating an offspring that was genetically more superior. And it's quite concerning that oral contraceptives seem to block or reduce this ability to make genetically sound decisions on who to mate with for higher odds of producing fit offspring that goes well with evolution. And the effects don't end there. A study looked at how attractive women find themselves, so their self-perceptions of their attractiveness, which then plays a psychological role on who they target as potential partners. They studied 872 women across 70 consecutive days, and concluded that they felt more attractive before ovulation in the follicular phase of their menstrual cycle. And if you'd like a crash course on some female reproductive biology, you can find that in episode 5, where I talk about fertility and COVID. But here I will assume you are more or less familiar with the workings of the female reproductive system. Other studies found that women's sexual interests also change in their cycle. Women near ovulation showed greater sexual attraction to men who are not their partners, relative to their attractions in the luteal phase after ovulation. Another study looked at 30 partnered women and found that near ovulation, they dressed to impress. They wore more attractive looking clothing and paid more attention to self-grooming. Other studies looked at how men perceive women to be based on their menstrual cycles. And men certainly seem to unconsciously distinguish between ovulating and non-ovulating women using olfactory cues. Again, by smelling shirts. Males rated sexual attractiveness of women to be the highest when women are mid-cycle, right around ovulation. And once again, birth control demolished this cyclic attractiveness of body odor of women. The pill didn't decrease a woman's attractiveness, but it removed the further increase in attractiveness to males during ovulation. Another study looked at what happens in men when they smell these shirts of women. And they found that the odor emitted from women in their ovulatory phase increased testosterone and decreased cortisol. High testosterone and low cortisol is what you want. These two hormones inhibit the effects of one another and they balance each other to modulate sexual desire. High testosterone is associated with higher sexual desire and high cortisol with lower sexual desire. So this hormonal balance was at its best for optimal desire when they were exposed to the body scents of women in their ovulatory phase. There are other studies that also explore whether subtle changes in women's faces around ovulation, and they show that men might have a preference for faces in the follicular phase before ovulation versus the luteal phase after ovulation. All of this was to say that by the time you are in the car with the guy, you both have a pretty good idea about whether you want to do more than talk or not, to tell you that biology is not just about romance. It's about selection. Now, it's finally time for the next act. Act 2, the spark, intellectual stimulation and deepening attraction. Okay, we are back with the lovebirds. Scene 1, you have sat down, you're talking, and suddenly the attraction that was first ignited by looks and chemistry is evolving. It's not just about physical appearance anymore. It's about conversation and curiosity, the way they challenge and excite each other's minds. You're also observing each other's body language. As you observe how he's treating the staff or his tone and how he talks about himself, your mirror neurons activate. And without you noticing, you subtly sync your body language, making you mimic each other's gestures. The medial prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction are important regions in your brain for empathy and theory of mind. They help you assess whether he shows empathy and curiosity and social awareness. Based on his body language, your amygdala will also be on the lookout to evaluate potential threats or red flags. And the more you engage, dopamine and oxytocin keep working together to reinforce pleasure and reward. Scene 2. The conversation is still flowing. You feel as if you've known each other forever. Or maybe you start getting a little spiritual and wonder if you've met in previous lives. Dopamine and norepinephrine are activated, creating feelings of excitement and focus and pleasure. In your brain, the default mode network is also highly active. This is a network between the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and angular gyrus. The name default hints you that it's the default background activity behind your daily mind wandering. It's best known for being active when you're not focused on the outside world, and the brain is at wakeful rest, focused on introspection and self-directed thought. A study looked at the default mode network activity in people during social interactions and found it to be activated more during reciprocated trust compared to violation of trust. So it was interacting with components of attention to signal the relative importance of positive experiences. So when you're having a good time at your date, the default mode network works with the limbic system, the prefrontal cortex, to assess trust and compatibility and emotional depth. It makes the experience feel immersive and meaningful, emotionally charged, while also allowing you to fantasize about the future of this connection, already visualizing future interactions, playing a crucial role in making the date unforgettable. And a fair mention goes to endorphins here, which are creating a sense of warmth and well-being amidst the excitement and motivation. A very interesting study to mention here used functional MRI to measure resting state brain activity to predict initial compatibility. The more similar the functional connectivity of two people, the more compatible they were as potential partners. It's so odd, isn't it? Or maybe it's something we've always known but couldn't make sense of it. Your brain knows who is on the same wavelength, which is also a function of frequency. If your frequencies or wavelengths don't match, you struggle with your initial compatibility. Okay, scene 3. The restaurant is about to close. They're kindly letting you know that you gotta go. You're disappointed that this magic has to end. Dopamine can already start to drop, creating a sense of longing or mild disappointment while you're still at the table. Oxytocin remains high and reinforces your desire to continue the connection. And scene 4, he drops you off, and if everything went as magical as I just described, you share a goodnight kiss. A kiss that you both enjoy. Dopamine and oxytocin go through the roof. Norepinephrine is fueling your excitement. The intense sensory input activates the hypothalamus to also release vasopressin. Oxytocin and vasopressin are best buds when it comes to monogamous behavior and attachment. The more intimate the kiss, the stronger the neurochemical response, which also leads to stronger memory formation. The kiss gets etched into emotional memory. Vasopressin and oxytocin shift the relationship from the dopamine-driven pure attraction to deeper emotional attachment. They turn the kiss into something more, signaling to the brain that this connection might be worth holding on to. Scene 5. You're in bed thinking about what just happened. Was this love at first sight? Your hippocampus is replaying and consolidating memories of the date, reinforcing the positive experience. Your amygdala is adding its own touch by signaling that it feels safe. The prefrontal cortex is assessing the potential for long-term, the pros and the cons. Oxytocin and vasopressin are coding for attachment. Your ventral tegmental area is still releasing dopamine, keeping you focused on him and how good it felt to be around him, how rewarding it would be to do that all again. It works together with the excited norepinephrine, and because of them, here come the butterflies in your gut. But how do you know whether the butterflies are safe butterflies or anxious butterflies? Are they signaling safety and stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, or did your brain and body sense some unpredictability and the butterflies are there as caution, activating your sympathetic nervous system? Is what you're mistaking for attraction actually anxiety? The one distinction I can offer you, as common sense as it might sound, is that safe butterflies come with a sense of ease. Even as excitement builds, they help the body relax and feel secure. If the heart races too fast, if there's an undercurrent of unease, that could be the sympathetic nervous system in overdrive. These, then, are the anxious butterflies. And this type might feel very exciting at first, but psychology suggests that people with unresolved emotional wounds can be drawn to relationships that feel intense but unstable, what some call a trauma bond, which can be addictive and uncertain. You can call it science, you can call it soulmates written in the stars, You can say we recognize each other immediately, or you can say it took effort and time. What matters is for the connection to provide you with emotional safety and not biased on your past experiences, which can make some people react to love as safety and others react to it as potential threat. So when you feel the butterflies, ask yourself, do they make you feel grounded or do they make you feel like you can't breathe? Because the way your body responds might be the biggest clue of all. Let's go to Act 3. Act 3, the fall. Days or weeks have passed. The late night conversations, the inside jokes, the feeling of being drawn to each other. It's no longer just attraction. It's something deeper now. Oxytocin is deepening trust and emotional intimacy. The brain's reward center starts encoding their presence as something habitual and essential. Even your brain waves begin to synchronize. And as mentioned earlier, odds are they were already at pretty similar wavelengths. Love isn't just a feeling at this point in time. Your brain is actively wiring for someone on how their presence becomes as comforting as home, maybe. If any conflicts arise, the anterior cingulate cortex is helping you regulate emotions and resolve any conflicts. One interesting phenomenon that probably starts somewhere around here is a drop in serotonin. You might think of serotonin as a happiness hormone, so it shouldn't be dropping when you're in love. But serotonin has a huge role in obsessive thoughts. In fact, reduced levels of serotonin are a molecular marker for obsessive compulsive disorder. And that's why those with OCD can get prescribed antidepressants to increase the amount of serotonin. A study from 1999 found that people in early stages of romantic love had serotonin levels 40% lower than normal, similar to those who have OCD. This suggests that infatuation has a neurochemical basis and makes early love feel obsessive and all-consuming. Over time, as the relationship stabilizes and deep attachment forms, serotonin levels return to normal, bringing a sense of security and emotional balance where you're no longer obsessed. Speaking of relationships stabilizing, let's move to Act 4. Act 4, the deep bond, the lasting love. Time has passed, the initial rush has settled, but instead of fading, something even more beautiful has emerged. A steady, unwavering presence. And let's assume this will continue for years and you become life partners. Vasopressin is strengthening your long-term attachment, promoting stability and monogamy. The prefrontal cortex becomes more engaged, shifting love from impulse to choice. It's also working with the hippocampus to build shared memories and navigate life's challenges together. And in addition to your brains syncing up, your heart rates also start to synchronize. You have physiologically tuned into each other. In love, the spark gets the credit, but it's the steady warmth that keeps love alive. It's not just a neurochemical high, it's the way our brains and bodies synchronize, choosing each other over and over again. It's both written in our neurons and written in our hearts. And maybe, just maybe, it's written in the stars and the universe as well. For today's ending, I'll resort to Alan Watts, a British philosopher known for bringing the Eastern spiritual teachings to the Western world. He has a description of falling in love, which I've adored for a while now. And I'm grateful for the friend who introduced me to Alan Watts, because he has some really thought-provoking thoughts. He states, quote, "It's crazy when we talk about love. We say falling in love, not rising into love. This suggests the idea of a fall, which ties back to very fundamental concepts. There's a curious connection between falling and creation. Taking such a significant risk is the foundation of all life. All of life is an act of faith and a gamble. The moment you take a step, it's based on faith. Going on a journey, that's an act of faith. Entering a human relationship, another act of faith. In doing so, you surrender, which is incredibly powerful. Love is an act of surrendering to another person, total abandonment. It's the essence of saying, I give myself. This might seem mad because it involves losing control. Sensible people aim to maintain control. But true wisdom might be realizing that what's genuinely sensible is to let go, to commit, and to surrender. This might seem mad, but from this perspective, in madness lies sanity. End quote. It's a paradox, isn't it? Love demands a surrender of control, a willingness to embrace the unpredictable. And in a world that values certainty, that can feel like madness. Yet, what suggests that by relinquishing control, we might actually find a deeper kind of wisdom? The desire to control often leads us to run away, to protect ourselves from pain. But the truth is, if you run away from the lows, you miss out on all the highs too. We hear no risk, no reward a lot when it comes to careers and ambitions, but I think love deserves that same principle. It's a risk to fall in love, but its highs will always beat its lows. So as Valentine's Day comes and goes, don't let love be something you celebrate just once a year. Go out and express it, not just romantically, but to everyone you hold close. Tell your friends, your family, the people that make your life brighter that you love them. Show it in your words, in your actions, in the way you show up for them. And most of all, be grateful, not just for being loved, but for the ability to love. Because to love is to be alive. It's one of the greatest things we get to experience. So don't let it slip by unnoticed. Keep embracing it every day. Thank you for being here. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. It truly helps keep my motivation up and I really appreciate it. Until next time, Santé.